For basically as long as we've been around, we've had this one huge question. Can we slow down aging? Well, a really fascinating new study just dropped a major clue. It suggests that a super simple daily habit might actually be able to turn back our internal clock, even just a little bit. So let's dive in and unpack the science behind all this.
All right, let me start by asking you a question, and it's a big one. Are you really as old as you think you are? I know, it sounds kind of like a trick question, right? But from a scientific standpoint, it's one of the most important questions we can ask about our health. And trust me, the answer might actually surprise you. So the reason that question isn't so simple is because, well, we all actually have two different ages. Yeah, you've got the one you celebrate with a birthday cake every year, but that's only just the beginning of the story. There's another, much deeper age that tells us what's really going on under the hood. Okay, so on one hand, you've got your chronological age. Super simple, right? It's just the number of years you've been alive. It's a fixed number, can't change it. But then you have your biological age, and this is the one that's really crucial. It's not fixed at all. It's this dynamic measure of the actual wear and tear on your body's cells and tissues. A good way to think about biological age is like it's the real age of your cells and your tissues. And get this, scientists can now measure this stuff using molecular markers. It gives us this incredible snapshot of our internal health and how well we're actually aging, completely separate from the calendar. All right, so how in the world do you even start to test if something can change this biological age? Well, that's where this massive clinical trial called Cosmos comes into the picture. Researchers set up this huge experiment to go hunt for some answers. And listen, this was no small-scale test. We're talking nearly 1,000 healthy adults with an average age of around 70. They randomly split them into one of three groups. One group got a daily multivitamin, another got a cocoa extract, and the third group, they got a placebo. This kind of rigorous setup is literally the gold standard for figuring out if something really, truly works. These researchers were definitely in it for the long haul. They collected DNA samples from every single person right at the beginning to get a baseline, to see what their biological age was starting out. Then they just patiently tracked them, collecting more data after year one, and then again at the very end of the 2-year study. This gave them a super clear before and after picture for everyone involved. So, after 2 years of patiently gathering all that data, it was time for the analysis. And the big question was, obviously, did any of this stuff make a difference? What they found was genuinely surprising. It pointed to a measurable slowdown in the aging process for one of the groups. So, let's break it down. The cocoa extract group, turns out no significant difference there. But when they looked at the multivitamin group and compared them to the folks who took the placebo, something really stood out. A clear, statistically significant change had happened. So what was the big result? The data showed that over the 2 years of the study, the group taking a daily multivitamin had a biological age that was, on average, 4 months younger than the placebo group. Now, I know 4 months might sound kind of modest, but it represents a real, measurable slowing of the biological clock. That's a big deal. And this is where it gets even more interesting. The researchers noticed that this positive effect was even stronger in people whose biological age was already higher than their chronological age, their birthday age. So in other words, it seems like the intervention worked best for the very people who needed it the most. Okay, this all sounds pretty incredible, but it definitely raises a huge question, right? How on earth do scientists even measure something as abstract as biological age? Well, the answer lies in this absolutely fascinating science of what they call our epigenetic clocks. See, it all comes down to a process called DNA methylation. It's basically where these tiny little chemical tags, they're called methyl groups, latch onto your DNA. Now, these tags don't change your fundamental genetic code, not at all. Instead, they act like little gatekeepers telling your genes when to be active and when to just stay quiet. Probably the best way to think about this is with a light switch analogy. Imagine your DNA is all the wiring for your entire house. The methyl groups, those are the light switches on the wall. They're the ones that decide which lights, or in this case, which genes, get turned on or off. And here's the key part. As we get older, the patterns of these switches change in pretty predictable ways. So building on that, scientists have created what they call epigenetic clocks. And these are basically these super advanced algorithms that analyze millions of these tiny light switch patterns all across your DNA. By reading those patterns, they can get a remarkably accurate estimate of your body's true biological age. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so let's recap.
We've got a study showing a simple intervention can slow down our epigenetic clock. That's fascinating science for sure. But what does it really mean for you, for me, for the future of how we all age?
Well, the researchers themselves are pretty optimistic, but also cautious, as they should be. One of the co-authors, Howard Sesso, pointed out that the real goal here isn't just about living longer. It's about figuring out how findings like these can lead to a quality aging experience. Improving our health span, not just our lifespan.
So, what should we take away from all this? Well, the effect is modest, yeah, but it's statistically significant. It's real. It suggests a simple multivitamin might actually play a role in healthier aging. But I think the bigger insight here is that our daily habits can have a direct, measurable impact on our internal biology. And look, while this is just one study, it really does open up a fascinating new chapter in how we understand aging.
And that really leaves us with one final thought-provoking question, doesn't it? If a simple, humble daily vitamin can produce a measurable change in our biological clock, it just makes you wonder, what other discoveries are waiting for us just around the corner in the science of slowing down aging? What's next?